Hey gurus, in this third video we're going to be configuring Postgres for SSL for the two source systems for our disaster recovery system. We'll be configuring SSL to ensure a secure connection between the two source systems to prevent the possibility of a man-in-the-middle attack, as the two Postgres systems have to be able to communicate to synchronize the data between the two systems. In order to set up SSL, it is required to have a server certificate, a server key, and a root certificate. In this demo, I'm going to set up a self-signed certificate to use between the two systems, but in a production environment, you'll need to reach out to your PKI or certificate management team. Now later on in this video, we're going to set the level of SSL security that we want from the certs that we've set up. The most secure SSL option is verify-full, and what this will do is make sure that the common name is verified, as well as reach out to the certificate authority to make sure that all the information in the keys and the certificates are correct. Then there's verify-ca. This won't necessarily verify the common name with the certificate authority. And then next we have require, and this doesn't provide any server identity verification, and it doesn't require the server to be trusted by the certificate authority. But what this does do is at least give you the data encryption between the two SOAR appliances. So let's go ahead and get started creating those self-signed certs for this demo purpose. So on the primary server, we're first going to make sure that we're in the Ansible/files directory. And we are not, so let's go there now. And now we're going to create the server key. Now this will ask for a passphrase, and you do need to put one in here. Now in order to use the key, we need to now remove that passphrase we just put on it. Okay, now we should have a server.key. Next, we need to create the server certificate using that key. Now when creating the certificate, it's going to ask some information to put into the certificate. When we get to the common name, put in the fully qualified domain name for your SOAR server. And there we go. And then since in this demo here, I'm going to be using the self-signed cert, so we'll use the server certificate also as the root certificate. Okay, and now we'll do all that again, but on the DR system. Now that we have our certificates, we need to provide the certificates to Postgres, either by manually installing these certificates in the correct places for Postgres, or we can supply the certificates in a specific location that the Ansible scripts will use to pick up the certs and put them in the correct location. For this demo though, we'll be doing it manually, but if you do wish to supply the certificates to be installed by Ansible, then down in the description below is a link to the Configuring Postgres for SSL documentation on the IBM website. So back on the primary system, we're going to create a Postgres SQL directory in the /crypt directory and set the owner group to Postgres, and the permissions to 750. And we can do this all in one line using the install command. There we go. And now if we look at the crypt directory, we see we have the Postgres directory, Postgres with the correct permission set up for this directory. And now we're going to copy the server cert into this directory. As well as on the same command, we will set the owner to Postgres, and also the permissions need to be set to 644. I would do something similar, but for the server key, we'll put it in the same directory. I'll have the same owner. And we set the permissions to 0600. And then now we need to take the root certificate and put it on the other appliance. But before we do that, we need to go over to the other appliance and see where the Postgres directory is for that user. So if we do ~Postgres, it'll give an error, but it will show us where the directory is for that user. And now we need to create a .postgres SQL directory in the home directory for that Postgres user, and set the ownership to the Postgres user, and permissions need to be set to 0731. We'll do that with that install command. There we go. And now we need to transfer the root certificate from the other appliance over to the second appliance. And we can do that with SCP. There we go. And now if we ls the var lib pgsql directory, we'll see that root certificate is there. And now we need to set the correct permissions on that file, which we'll see if we run that ls again with the proper flags, that it is currently owned by root, but we need to switch it over to Postgres user and change the permissions as well. There we go. And now we'll do the same, but on the DR system, and we'll transfer the root certificate from the DR system back to the primary. There we go. Now we have the certs in their respective directories. We can confirm that by doing an ls on the crypt/postgres directory. Well as the home directory for the Postgres user. And lastly, we can verify the server certificate using the root certificate. Run the following command as root or the Postgres user from the crypt/postgres SQL directory on either of the appliances. It came back as OK, and it does tell us it is a self-signed certificate. So to recap, in this video, we set up a self-signed certificate on both systems, but in a production environment, as mentioned before, you would reach out to your PKI or certificate authority administrators to get the server and root certificates. And then we manually installed the certificates in the proper directories for Postgres SQL. Again, if you want to supply the certificates to Ansible for the Ansible scripts to automatically install the certificates for you, then follow the link in the description below to the IBM documentation to set that up. Coming up in the next video, we'll set up the Ansible inventory files as well as the Ansible Vault files, which will allow us to then activate the disaster recovery playbooks to finally enable disaster recovery across the two SOAR platforms. If you have any questions or comments in the meantime, feel free to comment below. Otherwise, see you on the next video.